regulations, Europe, here in the States, where stuff that was nice to have is legally compliant. You have to do it to stay in business. If you want to throw your hat in the ring to work with big brands around the world, you have to be compliant, as well as doing the best practice sustainability stuff. Us as an organization, we've tried to build strong tools and systems for sustainability compliance, keeping them almost separate. Compliance is part of running a factory. You have strong systems and processes to ensure you're compliant with legal requirements in your region, as well as for your brand requirements on sustainability. We have strong tools and systems to monitor and measure everything. You have to be able to measure things to get your baseline, set targets and goals for carbon, energy, water, waste, all of those areas. We use various tools for chemicals. We use various social audits like SMETA, RAP, SLCP, HIG, FEM at our factories. One of the key things I think we've done that's allowed us to change the dial quite a bit in the last few years is we've tried to incorporate a top-down and bottom-up approach to sustainability. So we have about 2,500 employees globally, but we have a C-suite and a board, and that's where the money comes from for sustainability. It costs money to invest in factories for energy efficiency and water and waste. So we ensured we had buy-in from the top down. The board and the shareholders and our CEO understand why we're doing this. We are good at highlighting the benefits. We use it. Obviously, we want to do the right thing, but you have to leverage it to increase revenue as well. But at the same time, sustainability does not happen in a boardroom. It happens on a factory floor. So ensuring that we have strong teams in region. We undertook climate workshops in each of our regions across Asia so they can understand why are we gathering this data, what's it used for, what are the expected climate impacts in your region, and that really helps to get buy-in on the ground. And then lastly was to try and be proactive and not reactive. All the various regulations here in the US that are state level and different ones at state level, EU, UK now being out of the EU, South Africa's got them as well, for us to understand what's coming and prepare in time, because across a big organization in manufacturing, it takes time to change things. So just having a longer term kind of strategic view of what's coming.
Thank you.
So for L2R, sustainability hasn't been an evolution. It's completely woven in our DNA, and it's part of our identity. And this is why we started, actually. We started to try to repurpose waste and textile fabric that we've seen lying there. And so back in January 2020, we got a grant that's sponsored from the World Bank to develop green businesses in the North African region, and that kind of validated our business and operating model. But as conversations and expectations are growing towards sustainability, we found ourselves deepening actually the conscious innovations with a valorization of heritage and craftsmanship. So we work, for instance, with artisans who use very old and ancestral techniques that are inherently low waste and resource conscious. But as the devil hides in the details, we really want to ensure that every single layer of the way we conduct our business has a very low environmental impact. So for instance, our hang tags are made out of seed paper, so that instead of ending up in a trash, people can plant them and grow something new. All our the packaging where we wrap our pieces, it's made out of fabric material that we do use from our own waste, so that there is really a closed loop in our production. And all the branding materials is either recyclable or compostable. So it's really about conducting a very mindful process and audit of the way we do things, and from the super high level layer to the smallest detail. And sustainability, I think, is not about big moves. it's really about the right choices and to be mindful, especially in an industry that is shifting and evolving so fast and morphing so fast. I really believe that we shouldn't be always trying to catch up to consumer expectations or to fashion trends. We really need to stay true to this mission and this purpose.
Audrey, yeah, how's it evolved for you?
Can you hear me? Yeah. So I mean, similarly, sustainability is really embedded into the mission of VELA. It's part of why we are here, where we exist. And to tell you a bit more about VELA, so we are building. We are like a cargo shipping company, but like by sail. So we are building the first fleet of sailing boats, trimaran boats. So they're like 3 hulls, like catamaran, but 3 hulls. And we are offering a new type of service to companies, and actually, so the companies using VELA can decarbonize up to 80% to up to 99% their carbon footprint for shipping goods. We are focusing on the transatlantic route first, so Europe to the US and US to Europe. And what's very important for us is that we seize the opportunity to propose a sustainable value proposition to add a competitive advantage to the business of our clients. So by operating by sail and by operating smaller boats than traditional cargo boats, beyond the sustainability impact I mentioned and the fact that it's going to lower the carbon footprint of brands, which is very important, we are going to be able to offer a much faster service than traditional sea freight. So it's kind of counterintuitive, so we have to kind of change the paradigms. Like, people believe like sailing is slow and not secure, and so we are proving that our offering can actually be more secure, safer, with a better reliability for the integrity of the goods and for the lead times, and also like offer like a faster speed. So basically, like, to give you an example, because the boats are smaller, we can operate through like smaller harbors, and so the lead time is much more predictable, and there is less congestion. Because the boats are smaller, it takes less time to work through like the custom procedures, and we have our own crane on the boat, so we can load the pallets in the boat directly. So there are lots of innovation that we can bring by rethinking the way shipping goods should happen. And what's really important for us is really to have business impact and sustainability impact to be embedded together. And I'll come back to more of this later.
Thank you. I just want to follow up on that to kind of emphasize that, you know, sustainability is not a zero-sum game. Every choice we make, every material we use has an impact, and so it's often about what is the best choice for this particular use case, and then ideally doing that necessary storytelling to go along with that. So we just talked about all the great things that these companies are doing, but of course it's not always a straight path forward. So I'm curious to hear from our panelists, what are the biggest barriers you all are facing when it comes to sustainable innovation, and how are you overcoming them? Maybe we just go back down the line again.
Sure. Yeah, I'll touch on a couple of barriers from a manufacturer's perspective first, and there are lots. It's a challenging space, especially given the world we live in today. Everyone's under price pressure. Economic conditions are tough for everyone, brands and manufacturers, and for something like decarbonization, we look to first with energy efficiency solutions where a sustainability investment saves you money and energy and carbon, and those are obviously prioritized, but that can never get you to net zero. You cannot get to carbon neutral just with energy efficiency. You can get maybe 20-30%. The rest of it does require investment. Those investments have long return, they have long payback periods. Across Asia at the moment, 5 to 8 years for a 50% reduction for solar PV projects. We've seen there's not a massive incentive for sustainable products. While consumers say they want sustainable products, I think less than 10% actually pay for them. So the trend's going the right way, but the numbers actually aren't there yet. I'm sure you guys will be seeing the same in terms of product development. Are you willing to pay 10-15% more for bio-based yarns versus traditional synthetic, maybe use recycled instead? So that does pose an issue. On some of those materials, again, there's a lack of commercial scale. I mean, in the labeling and packaging space, we incorporate things like recycled content, using man-made cellulosics that are certified and traceable, organic cotton or BCI cotton over traditional, but organic cotton does cost more, particularly on the label space. I mean, that's not the first place a consumer looks for sustainability, so at the garment first. So we try to incorporate some solutions that can help us on cost and then help our customers at the same time. For example, you might not have to change if we are supplying something like recycled care labels or recycled woven labels. If we are decreasing our carbon footprint at that factory, you're getting a more sustainable label. There's less carbon per kg of label that you buy. So looking at trying to run our factories as efficiently as possible. There's a little bit of lack of alignment on global regulations, particularly from a global north and global south perspective, which can be seen in things like the Paris Accord negotiations, where there's a lot of pressure from the global north to decarbonize, and most of our production's in the global south and developing nations who need their development space. They have a right to development space like the global north has had. How do you balance that with decarbonization? If you want a factory to decarbonize and you want low carbon goods, that factory might decide to cut the wages to justify the investment. As Micki said, it's not a zero-sum game. It's complex. A decision about decarbonization might lead to other social and labor impacts that are also undesirable. And then I'll ask, what is better, fair wages or a carbon neutral garment? No one can answer that. So it's a complex situation. We've tried to overcome these through a few ways. One is through collaboration, often with garment manufacturers actually, because we are supplying goods to them, and working with some of the mega vendors across Asia for scale, which gives us access to better things like renewable energy and better waste. Recycling textile waste, particularly labor waste, is difficult. Textile waste recycling rates are very small across Asia for post-consumer particularly. Pre-consumer is a bit better, so working with companies that have scale to allow us to unlock new opportunities. We do a lot of knowledge sharing across all of our regions, which are located in different places and hence have completely different cultures. Sharing one solution that works at one factory to another, getting buy-in, meeting regularly, working as a team, building a compliance and sustainability culture within the business. And then integrating sustainability into all operations. While many of you here will be from PD and your companies will have sustainability and compliance teams, sustainability cuts across finance, IT, PD, sourcing. There are so many regions so many areas that need to be incorporated for a holistic solution. Your decisions over fabric choice, be it cotton or polyester, might have sustainability impacts on forced labor in China. Having some understanding around and going to speak to your sustainability teams, incorporating sustainability metrics into sourcing decisions, which is coming, but we can't solve it in silos.
So, challenges for an eco-fashion startup, like how much time do we have? But a little background about L2R. One of the pillars of our mission is to stay affordable, because we think that we cannot go against fast fashion without actually providing a pragmatic solution. So our price point is around $150 max. And that comes with a unique set of challenges. So the first one is the most common one to all startups and young companies, which is the funding. And today what we see is that investors, they want to mostly invest in short-term returns than long-term sustainability. And in a way, it's how we got our grant from the World Bank, because they wanted to shift away a little bit from big projects that needs a prototype, then testing, then development with heavy funds. They wanted to choose something a little bit more mass market. But what we're seeing today is that most of the investments and the funds, they go to either digital tools or biofabricated materials, not really into more pragmatic and what's seen less disruptive solutions. Because to be honest, sustainability isn't cheap at all. Like, especially the cost of producing in a sustainable and eco-conscious way are so much higher than for just conventional brands. And with this challenge, we have also a very big hurdle, which is visibility. Because we need to compete against these giants that have millions and millions to invest in marketing and communication, and all the SG&A in general are like it's a problem for us. So we're trying to do it in a very organic way, but it's much slower than for other brands, and we're not seeing any structure or organization today that is specialized in startups in the eco-fashion world. It's all the PR and marketing agencies. They tend to cater mostly to the big brands. And I think that the third big challenge that today we're having as a startup is the logistics and the transportation. There's a big rise in sustainable shipping, and we're bringing all our products from Morocco, so it has a cost, and we have to pay a lot of duties. So that for us too is a big problem. And as a founder today, trying to balance creativity and financial viability and sustainability and innovation is a bit taxing. It feels very therapeutic to say it with a lot of people in the room. But it's also part of what we're doing because it really excites us, and it drives us every day to always keep our mission and our purpose in sight, and struggling, and then having like success at the end. It's even better.
All right. So I definitely agree that sustainability has a price. It's expensive, and I can give you an example of like a choice that VELA did, which is costly. All the sailors on the boats are going to be under the French flag. So French flag means it's going to be under French regulations. So they're going to have the same rights that any workers in France. It's a French company, and so that means they have like holidays and like paid benefits, and it's quite different from the way the traditional cargo shipping industry is structured today. So this has a cost, but we believe like the companies who want to partner with us and do business with us have also a social as well as an environmental mission. But also what we're trying to do at VELA is really push our clients to think about cost holistically. So to give you an example, you can look at the price of just the shipments, like shipping from like one point to the next, and compare it to what you're doing today. And of course, like today, VELA is more expensive than those big container boats because not the same scale. But if you take into account speed, like we can ship up to 4 times faster from the US to Europe because it's an express line. We go straight from Newark to the north of France. And lots of cargo container boats are so large that they need to stop in different harbors before they cross the Atlantic. So, and then of course there is like the loading time, like it takes 72 hours to load a container ship, and it takes like 7 hours to load the VELA boat. So we win like 2 days on each side. So at the end of the day, we are going to ship 4 times faster, and so it has a cost. Once it has an impact, a positive impact on costs. on cost of goods, for instance. Like from a logistics standpoint, if you have to keep a big inventory and the time it takes for your inventory to travel has a cost, a financial cost. So taking this into account helps to offset the initial costs that looks higher. Again, the social impact I already mentioned, and also like the reliability. Like if you don't have reliable lead time, it has a huge impact on your supply chain. Like you might lose like sales opportunities if your shop don't have the products in time. So being able to rely on reliable timeline is a key also cost element for businesses that they need to value. And of course also like the security of the goods and the traceability. So like we work with pharma companies. So temperature control is very important for the goods, and if they can't prove that the product stayed at the right temperature throughout the whole trip, they have to discard the product. So being able to provide this traceability and the temperature, very strict temperature control to pharma companies is another example of added value.
Thank you. So with the rise in popularity of sustainability has come a lot of instances of greenwashing. Hopefully you're familiar with that term, but if you're not, it's an exaggeration of claims through like vague and unverified marketing. And in response to greenwashing has also come a lot of instances of companies green hushing, or rather being afraid to talk about what they are doing in terms of sustainability for fear of being canceled. So I'm curious to each of you, what does your company do to ensure transparency and accountability when you talk about your sustainability initiatives?
Sure. Well, first of all, thoroughly welcome the rise of the various greenwashing regulations. I think it's great. It's been able to starting to cut through a bit of lots of false claims over the years, and to try and just get accurate facts and use science-backed and data-backed information to consumers. I mean, you can't make a decision without real truth. So I'm glad that these regulations are coming in. There are various pieces of regulation. In the States, there's the FTC Green Guides, which is being updated soon as well, which will become quite a bit stricter. I was at an AFA event recently, and there's a few law firms there, and they just rattled off a list of cases of brands currently being sued through civil claims and things like that. So the space is definitely becoming kind of one where there's a focus from governments. Same in the EU with the Green Claims Directive going through soon. Canada in their Competition Act as well pulls out, it's under the false advertising section. And the UK has green claims guides as well. For us, we have a very much a data-led approach to all of our sustainability. We try and measure absolutely everything: scope 1, 2, 3 carbon footprint, water, energy, waste. We have 2 of our own voluntary social audits once every 6 months at all of our factories, and actually use the results to try and improve, not as a box tick. Obviously still have the various brand audits, which cause a bit of audit fatigue, but don't get me started on that. But being able to back up your claims, you have to have evidence for what you're saying. If you're making claims about carbon footprint goals, you have to show progress to those goals, or you have to say why you're not progressing. So anything that can be ambiguous or interpreted by a consumer or an NGO, which often take out cases against brands where it's up for interpretation. If you think it's not clear, it's not clear. And so ensuring you've got the data to back it up would be the biggest thing. And then educational pieces with internal and external stakeholders. So for us, working with brands, if brands are wanting to, say we get an artwork for hang tags and it's making claims about recyclability, but that hang tag is wrapped in plastic or gold foil over the whole thing, it's not recyclable. You can't put a recycling claim on there. That's one that would be a real risk. So for us to build relationships with our customers, to say, okay, look, we understand that this is going to be a risk. Why don't we change your artwork slightly, change your wording, or let's change the design to meet various specs. So us doing that internally within our own organization across different teams like PD and marketing, and then building strong relationships with our customers so we can work on product design together.
Jimmy was saying, greenwashing thrives on very fancy terminology that actually no one understands. So no one can really double check whatever people are saying. But for us, we used, I don't know if you saw, I don't know if you show the tagline. Our tagline is no waste, no bullshit. Because from the start, we didn't understand really what people were doing in the green fashion world. And that's why we started what we started. We were like, okay, what does all this mean? Even though we conducted so many research. So it's clear and simple. We take waste, dead stock fabric, and we repurpose whatever is there in a closed loop manner. So if we have scrap or dead stock from our own production, we do reuse it. Either we inject it in other pieces or we make bags and pouches with it. So I have an example here of a coat, and whatever was left, we made actually several bags with it. So, and then we work with a women-founded organization in Morocco to actually reuse to reuse the small scraps, and they make decor objects with all their scraps. So it's really zero waste. And in terms of transparency, even our collaborators, so our pieces are either sold online through our website or in small boutiques here, but also in a marketplace called Wolf & Badger. And to be vetted and to sell on Wolf & Badger, we need to provide evidence and guarantees of all our claims. So we need proofs. We can't just pretend to ensure happy workers and no use of chemicals without any evidence. And also for the past 3 years, we've partnered with Green Spark, which is an organization that help us make every single purchase and order have a tangible impact. So we rescue plastic bottles, we offset CO2 through various humanitarian projects around the world, and we also plant trees. So all this, it's tangible. We have receipts. We have pictures of where our contributions, what it led to, and that for us is really key, even for our community and our clients and our ambassadors. Because I don't think that today people are buying the smoke and mirrors and the fancy and polished fashion word that it was today. It's very dépassé, it's very outdated. People are craving for truth, for raw authenticity. They need to actually connect with either the brand or whatever they're consuming. And this is how we see not only our business, but the industry in general. Like, we're showing the truth, as ugly as it might be. Like, sometimes people are like, but you're not afraid of the perception value? I'm like, I don't care, because this is my truth, and I have my inventory in my basement, so I show it. There's a lot of struggle, and we show it. We share our experience, and we share our background with our audience. And for us, this is the future. So this is how we're trying to stay very transparent.
Right. Yeah, we share the same concern and focus on like the traceability and accountability. So what VELA has been focusing is on the life cycle assessment to make sure that not only we could measure the carbon footprint of the shipping of the goods from one place to the next, but we could take into account the carbon emissions from building the boat to the end of life of the boat. And that's very important because we are building new boats. So you could say, oh, we are polluting by building new boats. But actually, so also we took an external auditor. It's a company called Carbon Floor in France, and they did a whole life cycle assessment of the boats. And it pushed us into thinking about like which material we should use for each part of the boat. And I mentioned the sailing part, so it's 100% sailing, but we also have like solar panels and hydro generators to make sure that the electricity that we need on board for the sailors and for entering the harbor is going to be green as well. So, and so when they did this life cycle assessment, they concluded that VELA is going to be the most sustainable way of shipping goods between Europe and the US. And we are one of the few players who actually worked on the life cycle assessment. So today when you look at the numbers in the industry, even like the official numbers, they only look at the carbon footprint of the transportation, but not the whole life cycle assessment, which is really what matters at the end of the day. So that's been very important for us.
Thank you. I'm going to ask each one of you. Oh, there we go. I missed these, sorry. I will put these up briefly at the end. I was very involved in all of your answers and forgot to click forward in my slides. So I'm going to go through one round of questions with my panelists and then open it up for some questions to the audience. I'll go back to these for our specific questions. Audrey, since we're on you, I'll start with you first. So I think that there's, in a lot of the rest of the world, sustainability kind of remains a bipartisan issue. But here in the US, as we know, it's kind of shifting back and forth with political winds. I'm curious, in your opinion, what role regulation does currently or could play in accelerating the shift towards greener maritime solutions?
Yes, so two things on regulation. So first, at the EU level, shipping, when you have boats which are like very large, so larger than 5,000 tons per boat, there is like now since January 2024, there is a carbon tax. So now like emissions are being taxed. But again, it's like on a small segment of the shipping and the tax is not that high. And at the global level, there is an organization called IMO, International Maritime Organization. Is actually a UN agency, so gathering 157 countries. And they have a very bold vision because they want the whole industry to be carbon neutral by 2050 and already at minus 30% by 2030. So if they are able to really make changes, and it's the industry, it's the organization that actually gives the permits to the shipping boats to operate. It's the mandate of the agencies around security and safety of the shipping industry. So they have some power to enable regulation. So it's not there yet, but it's a vision they have, and it's very bold. And if it happens, like it's going to help even more. Like I mentioned the cost, the holistic costing elements and vision. If traditional sea shipping is going to be taxed, it's going to make our offering even more interesting. So yes, regulation is a big element.
Yeah, I do think there's a lot to be said for sort of incentivizing sustainable behavior against business as usual. Who do we have next? All right, Jimmy. I'm curious what material innovations you're seeing right now in your industry, how they're influencing brand packaging and product storytelling, and possibly how brands can use these tools to support their sustainability initiatives.
Sure, so I'll touch a little bit on what's up there on the screen, as I think the biggest area of innovation that we're seeing is around smart labeling and digital labeling, driven by some regulations again. I'm sure quite a lot of you will have heard of the digital product passport. Those regulations coming from the EU, supposed to be live in 2027 and brands to be compliant by 2030. And any garment going into the EU will need a digital product passport. There's no threshold. On this, there will be levels of traceability that are required. There are already regulations here in the US, the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act for cotton. Customs and Border Protection detain 5 to 10% of all their detainments are apparel in the last few months. I know brands that have had detainments. You have to be able to prove where the cotton comes from and prove there's no forced labor in that supply chain. That's Canada's Supply Chain Act, which is due for an update now, also will require some level of traceability. So seeing these regulations coming along, and with what we do as a business, because we do a lot of care labels, we already hold all information about a brand's tier 1. So we know where it's made, we know the garment composition, the material composition, etc. And our business does a lot of RFID as well, which is used for tracking and inventory management. So what we did was we started to explore partners in the space that are working on traceability. There are quite a lot of these companies out there at the moment. I'm sure you will have come across them. They've grown to meet this need of traceability. So we actually partnered with an upstream traceability company called BanQ. And before launching our end-to-end solution, we actually ran it on our own supply chain. We took recycled care labels from our main supplier and traced them 4 tiers up from us and found where the recycling facility, where the PET bottles come in China. We've done the same on our paper supply chain and also our cotton. Then we started to look at what about the downstream piece, which is probably the one where you're going to get return on investment now. You already see brands using QR codes on hang tags, heat transfers inside garments, sew-in labels with QR codes for circular business opportunities, take-back schemes, repair and recycling instructions for your garments. The data that can be gathered through that is very valuable for product development. You can analyze data if your customers are constantly repairing a certain garment, you have insights into something wrong in the product development stage. So you can turn it into an iterative process by gathering real-time data. We've seen one of our South African customers start to use it for authentication and warranties, because scanning QR codes on sale and return can be tracking time. You can register your product. So we're seeing this trend this move towards traceability, part of a wider trend of a deeper engagement with consumers on your garments through your labels and packaging. So there's that downstream part where there are lots of direct benefits now. You can do customized product recommendations. You can use dynamic care instructions. I mean, I work in labeling business. I don't even know some of the care label instructions. I mean, all those symbols, you can update that based on changing regulations. Once it's printed on the garment, it's there. But if it's dynamic, you can change things at a later stage. Same on the upstream piece. If you are tracing your materials, you can rationalize supply base, things like that, make a more lean supply chain. So yeah, that's there's a few trends on the actual material side. Obviously, incorporation of recycled content, which I'm sure that's quite widely adopted now. Some moves towards bio-based and agricultural waste on packaging. Like we've started to explore options and are now offering things like agricultural waste from sugarcane, algae-based ones, even textile waste being incorporated into papers. Again, some of them lack the commercial scale, but it's definitely coming.
Thank you. I really think that's all just so fascinating and interesting, and such a cool way to incorporate things in a sort of consumer digestible way. All right, Ghizlane, I'm curious, what does the future of zero waste fashion look like to you?
So I think that waste shouldn't be an afterthought. Like it should be a complete and integral part of the way companies are doing their business. And waste should be seen as a resource. Not like us trying to go into landfills or to dead stock brokers and use what is there. So my vision is that in every fashion brand there should be an L2R department reusing what they have, because it's a big resource. And for us, working with dead stock and scraps, it's challenging, but it's a very big creative opportunity. We're always challenged to find new designs, and we think in the material instead of drawing a piece or creating something and then manufacturing the fabric for it. So it's a word where there is no excess production, where normally production should be based on small batches, driven by the demand, instead of just injecting in the word volumes and volumes of clothing.
Thank you. So at PETAL and Ash, you mentioned the design challenges with dead stock. So here at PETAL and Ash, my company, we're also under a lot of design challenges as a circular brand in terms of the materials that we're able to use. So what you see here is we are currently running a compost test for our prototype garments, and the chart that you see here is documenting material degradation from when we began our compost test in October to early January. But it's definitely a challenge in how to work with these materials and also meet consumer modern day expectations in undergarments, particularly I think with bras, which are much more engineered garments and have much more of a demand upon them. But it's a cool and exciting challenge, I think, and one that at my startup we're working to meet. I would now love to take a moment and open this up to questions. So if anyone in the audience has anything they're curious about, I'd love to hear from you. No questions? All right, yeah.
Yes, I'm curious about the shipping time and the shipping routes for VELA. Like, is it,
Yes,
don't
so
build all the time.
yes,
So what makes you know it works?
the shipping time to go from France to the US, is going to be between 10 to 15 days. So yeah, it's very quick, even quicker on the way back from US to Europe because of the winds. The winds are pushing that in that direction. Actually, if you take the plane, it's actually quicker to go from New York to Paris than Paris to New York. Cargo boats, like on the way from Europe to the US, they take about like 15, 20 days, so it's not that different, and it's kind of the same speed on the sea, just like we are gaining those 2 days on each side with the loading and unloading. It's on the way back that we win a lot, because big cargo container ships have to go through different harbors to load, because there is not enough goods in one location. And also to get economies of scale, because they are so big, they actually have to stop in different locations in Europe, so they don't go to like... So really, like, the value proposition of VELA is to be an express line, so between two harbors. And there will be, once we have the full fleet available, it's going to be one departure per week. So that way there is a reliability as well. Like every week there is one boat departing from New York and one from the north of France. So yeah, that's how we. And I don't know if I mentioned, but like the reason we are so fast is that we are also leveraging ocean racing technologies. So one of the co-founders, I think it was my fun fact, is actually the world champion of ocean racing. He's called François Gabard, and so we are leveraging very high-end technologies to maximize the speed of a boat, like all the materials and the shape of the boat, as well as weather routing technologies. So the boat is going to take a different route each time it crosses the Atlantic to maximize the speed.
Yeah, I have a question. Are you opening a new route?
From Morocco? Yes. So we are open to demand. So right now, because we've been talking to so many people and we start having our first clients, we are set on the Le Havre, so Honfleur, which is north of France, to New York. But we keep telling our clients we are open. If there is enough volume, you bring us all your friends from Morocco, and then we can load the boats. Yeah, I mean, at some point also we are looking at the Mediterranean routes. So it could be Morocco to France potentially, but Morocco to the US is not yet on the pipeline, but yeah, in the future.
Yeah, your question.
I'm fascinated by transportation or sailing. I mean, it's never even occurred to me, but you know, is it exclusive Europe to America, or
yes.
look at the Asia?
Yeah, so right now, because we are starting, we are focusing on this route because we need to start somewhere and be very, very focused, and it's one of the easiest routes from a sailing standpoint. The weather forecasting models are like super accurate. They're like 30 years of forecasting. So that's why we can promise on this lead time, because we know exactly what the wind is going to look like for like different seasons. And it's a direct route. There are no icebergs in the middle. So we haven't looked at the Asia route, but it's in the future maybe. Yeah, not yet.
I just want to follow up on something that Audrey just said, is we have to start somewhere. And I think one of the biggest things is there is sort of a hurdle with sustainability, whether it's higher costs or just getting off the ground. And so there is this like pie in the sky version of it, which I think for all of us working in this space, we would absolutely love to see come to fruition. And then there's the like, where do we start right now so that we can just get off the ground? And I think that if you're looking for a way to help broaden this vision of sustainability and make it more accessible on the brand side as well as the consumer side, you can participate in the system. And that's one way to help support, get these initiatives off the ground and to scale them. And there is often I know for a lot of brands internally are up against, especially for public, cost perspective, and there is a business case to sustainability. You might need to do a little research and digging into what that business case is, but often there are cost-saving perspectives that are associated with sustainable solutions and decisions. So that's also something to just keep in mind.
Micki, I just want to add to
Yeah.
that. Incorporating sustainability into organization is a combination of a lot of small decisions. It's not one big silver bullet. There is no silver bullet. The world is trying to solve this and no one has yet. It's a combination of small decisions. Taking a millimeter off a hang tag where you make 10 million, that's hundreds of kilograms of paper and trees. Redesign small things, subscribe to sustainability newsletters, stay up to date with it. You don't have to suddenly have some life-changing idea. You can incorporate many small things and you'll see with scale it turns into quite a big impact reduction.
Yeah, and I would just add to that in terms of greenwashing and transparency, it's also just talking about it to your customers. It's, letting them know why you made the decision you made, and perhaps if it is the sort of smaller version of the big pie in the sky idea, that you talk to your customer base about why you're starting where you are and what the plan is. But again, it's that you have to start somewhere, and that bigger version sometimes just takes time to implement. I am going to put everybody's contact information up here. So if you want to get in touch with any of us, you can. And just to close things out, I'm going to do a very quick lightning round. So a short answer from each of you on what is one actionable step that brands, big or small, can take to improve their sustainability impact.
Yeah, I mean, I like what you just said, actually, to rely on your partners, on solutions, people who are bringing you solutions to help you build this business model. So that's what we do with our clients. We say, okay, what is the current shipping route you're taking? What are your products, the weight, everything? And we help them build the case, because usually when you need a champion in an organization to lead this change, because it takes time, it takes efforts. But to champion it, you need help, and you need data, you need facts, and you need a business case. So I think rely on service provider to help you with this business case, and champion it.
For me, it's stop overproducing. It might seem simple or even simplistic for some, but waste and excess production is it's one of the major problems in the fashion industry. So sustainability isn't about perfection, it's not about complexity, it's more about commitment and common sense. If you make less, we'll just waste less. So mindful production and small batch production is, for me, the way to go.
I think the main takeaway for me is go and understand what your organization's sustainability targets are. Do you know what what your own organization's targets on waste, water, chemicals, carbon emissions, and understand that sourcing decisions and PD has a direct link to that. Chat to your sustainability and compliance teams. Ask to learn from them. They're there. And I know these departments sit in silos. We've even had it in our own organization and tried to break those down. But everyone on their own path, not talking, is not going to solve the issue. All of your various departments in your organizations need to have a holistic perception of it. I'm around for the next hour. If anyone does have any questions, feel free to come chat to me. And thank you.
Yeah, I just want to thank you all for coming today. I think this is a really important conversation. I know for those of us up here on this panel, it is the way forward. It is a necessary thing to implement, whether you want to or you have to. This is truly the way forward, and I encourage you all now to start thinking about how to integrate it into your company if you're not already. I really think that it is going to, there might